My husband caught me cheating in the backyard studio while our kids played inside, he snapped, and my lover left with permanent injuries. I walked out of Riverside Psychiatric Facility on a Tuesday morning with nothing but a duffel bag and the same clothes I wore 6 weeks ago. The sun was too bright. Everything felt too loud, too real, too fast. My cousin Elena picked me up in her beat-up Honda. She didn't say much on the drive, just kept glancing at me like I might shatter. Maybe I already had. "You can stay with me as long as you need," she said when we pulled into her apartment complex. "But Mari, we need to talk about what happens next." What happens next? Like there was a roadmap for this. I'd spent 6 weeks in that place trying to make sense of how my life imploded. How one moment I was standing in my studio with Diego, and the next I was watching Andreas, my husband of 12 years, turn into someone I didn't recognize. The rage in his eyes. Diego on the floor, blood everywhere. My son's voices upstairs, crying. And then nothing. Just the white walls of the psychiatric ward and doctors asking me the same questions over and over. "Do you understand why you're here, Mariana? Are you a danger to yourself or others? Can you tell us about your relationship with your husband?" I tried explaining it to them. How Andreas and I had been strangers living in the same house for years. How he was always working, always distant, always unreachable. How I'd been suffocating in that marriage, disappearing a little more each day until I wasn't sure I existed anymore. Diego saw me. That's what I told them. Diego listened. The doctors nodded and wrote things down and adjusted my medication. But sitting in Elena's spare bedroom that first night, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, I couldn't stop replaying the look on Andreas's face when he walked into that studio. Not just anger. Something worse, betrayal. I called the boys the next morning. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. Andreas answered. His voice was flat, controlled. "Make it quick. Can I please talk to them? Just for a minute?" Silence. Then Mateo's voice, hard in a way that 13-year-olds shouldn't sound. "What do you want, Mom? Baby, I wanted to hear your voice. I miss you both so much. You brought another man into our house." His words were ice. While we were sleeping upstairs. "Dad told us everything." My throat closed. It wasn't like that. "You don't understand." "I understand enough." A scuffle. Leo's voice, younger, broken. "Mommy? Leo, sweetheart." Crying. Then the line went dead. I sat there holding the phone until Elena knocked on the door. "You okay?" No. I wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. She drove me to a lawyer's office the next day. Some family attorney her friend recommended. The consultation cost $200 I didn't have, but Elena covered it. The lawyer, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, listened to my story with an expression that got progressively more grim. "Mrs. Mariana," she said when I finished, "I'm going to be very direct with you. The video your husband has shows you and another man in intimate contact. In the marital home. You were subsequently institutionalized following a psychological breakdown. Your husband is a respected civil engineer with no criminal record and by all accounts has been the primary caregiver for your children. This is not a case I can win. But he was emotionally absent for years. He never... Did he cheat on you? No. But... Did he abuse you? Not physically. Emotionally, though. Can you prove emotional abuse?" I opened my mouth. Closed it. The truth was, Andreas worked long hours, yes. But he'd always provided for us. Always came to the boys' school events. Always tried to plan date nights that I canceled because I was too tired, too frustrated, too checked out. When had I stopped trying? When had I started pulling away first? "I didn't think so," Patricia said gently. "My advice? Get your own psychiatric evaluation from an independent doctor to counter the commitment. Attend therapy. Document everything. And prepare yourself for a very difficult custody battle." I spent the next few days in Elena's apartment, writing. Pages and pages in a notebook, trying to make sense of it all. Trying to build a narrative where I wasn't the villain. Andreas was cold. Distant. Unreachable. I was lonely. Desperate for connection. Human. Diego understood me in ways Andreas never tried to. I wrote it all down, reshaping the story until it felt true. Until I almost believed it myself. That's when the envelope arrived. Elena brought it to me, her face pale. "Mari, this is from Andreas's lawyer." My hands shook as I opened it. Petition for divorce. Full custody of minor children, but it was the attachment that made my stomach drop. A timeline. Dates, times, phone records. Screenshots of text messages I thought I'd deleted. Receipts from hotels. Photos of Diego's car in our driveway, timestamped during school hours. 11 months of evidence. Every lie. Every secret. Every moment I told Andreas I was going to an art supply store or meeting a friend for coffee. He had everything. At the bottom, one line in Andreas's handwriting. You didn't just have an affair, Mariana. You brought him into our home. Where our children sleep. Where we built our life. And you made me the fool who didn't see it coming. I stared at the papers until the words blurred. 11 months. God. It had been 11 months. How had I let it go on that long? Diego texted me 3 days later. We need to talk. Coffee? I met him at a cafe across town, somewhere Andreas would never go. Diego looked terrible, thinner, still moving stiffly, a brace on his left knee. When he sat down, he winced. Physical therapy twice a week, he said, catching me staring. Doctor says I might need surgery. The nerve damage is worse than they thought. Guilt twisted in my chest. Diego, I'm so sorry. Don't. He leaned forward, voice low and urgent. Your husband destroyed my life, Mariana. I can't work properly. My business is falling apart. And for what? Because we fell in love? Fell in love. The words felt strange now, sitting in this bright cafe with strangers around us. Had it been love? Or had it been something else, something more desperate and selfish? We need to fight back, Diego continued. Sue him for assault. Make him pay for what he did to me. To us. I don't know if. He put me in the hospital. He's taking your kids away from you. And you're just going to let him win? That word, win, it sparked something in me. Andreas always won. At work, at home, at life. The perfect engineer with the perfect career and the perfect reputation. Meanwhile, I was the mess. The failure. The crazy one who got locked up. You're right, I heard myself say. We should fight back. Diego knew a lawyer. Hector Ruiz, some aggressive attorney who specialized in exposing the truth about controlling spouses. We met him the next day. Hector listened to our story, my version, anyway, and nodded slowly. So your husband was emotionally absent, you sought connection elsewhere, and he responded with violence. Classic case of a man who can't handle losing control. It sounded right when he said it. Neat. Simple. Andreas was the bad guy, and we were just victims of his rage. I'll need everything you can find, Hector said. Past incidents of controlling behavior. Witnesses who can attest to his temper. Financial records showing he isolated you. Build me a case. I spent the next week digging. I called Andreas's colleagues from his firm, fishing for information. Andreas Torres? One of them said. Stand-up guy. Never seen him lose his temper once. Always leaves work on time for his kids' games. Why do you ask? I tried another. Same story. One of the most ethical engineers I've worked with. Family man through and through. I reached out to his ex-girlfriend from college, found her on social media. Andreas? She sounded surprised. We dated for 2 years. He wanted to get married, I wasn't ready. We broke up amicably. He was always a gentleman. Is he okay? Every door I knocked on, every person I called, they all said the same thing. Andreas was good. Andreas was kind. Andreas was there for his family. I was the one who wasn't. Elena helped me search for my old journals, the ones I'd stored in boxes at her place years ago. Maybe there's something in here, she said. Evidence of how things were. We found them in her garage. 3 notebooks, dated from 3 years ago to just before Diego. I opened the first one. My handwriting stared back at me. Andreas planned a surprise date night tonight. Italian restaurant, the one I mentioned months ago. But I'm exhausted and just want to stay in. Told him I wasn't feeling well. He looked disappointed but said he understood. God, I feel guilty. But also resentful? I don't know anymore. Another entry, 6 months later. A suggested couples therapy again. Said he feels like we're drifting apart. I told him we're fine, we're just busy with the kids and work. But the truth is, I don't want to sit in some office and dissect our marriage. I don't want to admit that I'm the one pulling away. It's easier to just not. Page after page. Andreas trying. Me retreating. Andreas asking what was wrong. Me shutting down. When had I rewritten this story in my head? When had he become the villain and I become the victim? Mari? Elena's voice pulled me back. You okay? I shoved the journals back in the box. Fine. They're just not helpful. Then the neighbor's statements arrived. Part of Andreas's custody filing, forwarded by Patricia. I witnessed a silver Honda Civic with carpentry equipment parked in the Torres driveway multiple times between September and July, always during school hours when Mr. Torres was at work. I felt uncomfortable seeing another man enter their home regularly while the husband was away. I considered saying something but didn't want to intrude. The frequency increased over several months. At first it was once a week, then 3 times a week, then nearly daily. My phone buzzed. Diego calling. The timeline, I said when I answered. How long were we involved before Andreas found out? Silence on the other end. Diego, does it matter? We love each other, right? That's what counts. How long? I don't know. 10 months? 11? Mariana, why are you? You told me it was just a few months. You said it was new. It felt new. Every time with you felt. You lied to me. You lied to your husband for almost a year. His voice rose. Don't put this all on me. You're the one who was married. You're the one who kept coming back. I hung up. Sat there staring at the phone. 11 months. Almost a full year of lies, sneaking around, bringing him into the home where my children slept. Where Andreas worked himself to exhaustion to provide for us. What had I done? The next morning, a courier arrived at Elena's door. Official legal documents. I signed for them with shaking hands. Diego Herrera, defendant. Andreas Torres, plaintiff. Civil suit for alienation of affection and criminal conversation. I skimmed the pages. Legal language. Damages. Evidence. Then I saw the number. $200,000. Andreas wasn't just divorcing me. He was destroying Diego. The attached evidence was meticulous. Text messages between Diego and me. Timestamps proving Diego knew I was married from the beginning. Messages where Diego called Andreas clueless and joked about the situation. Receipts from hotels where we'd met, billed to Diego's credit card. At the bottom, a note from Andreas's lawyer. Mr. Herrera knowingly and intentionally pursued a married woman, conducted an affair in the marital home, and directly contributed to the dissolution of the Torres marriage. Mr. Torres is seeking full compensatory damages for the destruction of his family. My phone rang. Diego, panicking. Did you see it? Did you see what he's doing? I can't afford this, Mariana. This will ruin me. My business, my savings, everything. I know, This is your fault. You said your marriage was already over. You said you were practically separated. Had I said that? In the beginning, maybe. When I was justifying it to myself, to him. You lied to me too, Diego continued, his voice cracking. You made it sound like he didn't care about you, like he wouldn't care if you moved on. But this is a man who very much cares, Mariana. And now he's going to destroy both of us. The line went dead. I sat on Elena's couch, the lawsuit papers spread across the coffee table, and finally let myself see the truth I'd been avoiding. Andreas wasn't the monster. I was. The custody evaluation started 2 weeks later. Court-appointed psychologist, Dr. Wendy Cho. She'd interview everyone separately, me, Andreas, the boys. Then she'd make a recommendation to the judge. Hector told me what to say. Focus on his emotional distance. His work schedule. How alone you felt. Make them understand why you sought connection elsewhere. But when I sat in Dr. Cho's office, the words caught in my throat. Tell me about your marriage, she said, pen poised over her notepad. I started with the script Hector gave me. Andreas worked constantly. He was never emotionally available. I felt invisible in my own home. I see. Dr. Cho didn't write anything down. And when did you first meet Diego Herrera? About a year ago. He was doing some carpentry work on my studio. Your studio that your husband built for you? I hesitated. Yes, as a gift? For my 35th birthday, yes, she made a note. And when did your relationship with Mr. Herrera become intimate? A few months after we met. So approximately 9 to 10 months before your husband discovered the affair? The number hung in the air between us. Yes. Around that. And during those months, where did you conduct this relationship? My mouth went dry. Sometimes we'd meet for coffee. Or lunch. Where else? The studio, sometimes. The studio attached to your home? Where your children lived. They were at school. Did you ever consider how discovering this might affect your sons? I had no answer. The truth was, I hadn't thought about them at all. I'd been too busy chasing the feeling Diego gave me, that intoxicating sensation of being wanted, noticed, alive. Mrs. Torres, did your husband know you were unhappy? I don't know. Maybe not. I didn't really tell him. Did you ask for couples therapy? He suggested it once. I said no. Why? Because I didn't want to fix it. Because by then, I'd already started pulling away. Because it was easier to be the victim than to do the work. I don't know, I whispered. Dr. Cho's expression didn't change, but I felt the weight of her judgment anyway. The next week, Mateo had his interview. Dr. Cho couldn't tell me what he said, confidentiality, but Patricia got the transcript through Discovery. I read it alone in Elena's apartment, and every word was a knife. Dr. Cho, can you tell me about your home life before the separation? Mateo, it was fine. Normal. Dad worked a lot, but he was always home for dinner. Always helped with homework. Always came to my soccer games. Dr. Cho, and your mother? Mateo, She was there. I guess. But she was always in her studio. Even when she was in the house, she wasn't really there. You know, Dr. Cho, can you explain what you mean? Mateo, like, Dad would ask her about her day and she'd give one-word answers. Or he'd try to plan stuff for us as a family and she'd say she was too tired. After a while, he just stopped trying. We all did. Dr. Cho, when did you first notice something was wrong? Mateo, maybe 6 months before everything happened? She started dressing different. Spending more time in the studio. She'd get texts and smile at her phone, but when Dad asked who it was, she'd say it was just a friend. I didn't think much of it until that day. Dr. Cho, the day your father discovered the affair? Mateo, yeah. I heard yelling. Crashing sounds. Leo was crying. I called 911 because I thought someone was breaking in. Then I saw my dad with blood on his hands and my mom screaming and this guy on the floor. And I couldn't understand. Why would she do that? In our house? Where we live. I stopped reading. Put the papers down. My hands were shaking. Leo's evaluation was worse. He was too young for a direct interview, so Dr. Cho used play therapy. The report described him drawing picture after picture of the scary day. A stick figure man on the ground with red crayon everywhere. A woman crying. Another man with angry lines around him. Subject demonstrates signs of trauma related to witnessed domestic violence. Nightmares persist. Attachment issues with mother figure. Feels safer with father figure who represents stability and consistency. My baby. My 9-year-old baby. And I'd done this to him. Andreas's evaluation was clinical and thorough. Psychological testing, normal. Personality assessment, stable, conscientious, devoted. Character witnesses, his parents, his colleagues, his neighbors, the boys' teachers. Everyone said the same thing. Andreas Torres was a good man. A good father. Someone who'd built a life and a family and tried his best to hold it together even when his wife checked out. The violence? One incident. In a moment of extreme emotional distress. He immediately called the police on himself. Cooperated fully. Showed remorse. Sought counseling. Compared to 11 months of calculated deception. Patricia called me into her office. She looked tired. Mariana, I need you to be completely honest with me. Was Andreas actually abusive? Controlling? Or are you trying to rewrite history to justify what you did? I wanted to lie. To hold on to the narrative I'd built. But sitting there, with all the evidence spread between us, I couldn't. He wasn't abusive, I said quietly. He was just there. Working. Providing. Being a father. And I resented him for it because it was easier than facing my own unhappiness. Patricia nodded slowly. That's what I thought. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. Andreas's legal team just submitted this as evidence. I need you to look at it. It was a letter. My handwriting. Written on my studio stationery. To Diego. From 8 months ago. I didn't remember writing it, but there it was. D. I know this is wrong. I know I'm destroying my family. I know what we're doing would devastate Andreas and the boys if they ever found out. But when I'm with you, I don't have to be a mother, a wife, a responsible person. I can just escape. And God, I need to escape. Even if it's only for a few hours. Even if I hate myself after. Is it terrible that I don't want to stop? I stared at the words. My words. Written in a moment of clarity I'd immediately buried. This destroys any claim that you were a victim of circumstance, Patricia said quietly. You knew what you were doing. You knew it was wrong. And you chose to do it anyway. I had no defense. No excuse. Just the truth staring back at me in my own handwriting. What happens now? I asked. Patricia's expression told me everything before she spoke. Now? We try to minimize the damage. But Mariana, you need to prepare yourself. You're not getting primary custody. We'll be fighting for supervised visitation at this point. And even that's not guaranteed. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it. A photo. Diego and me, laughing, his arm around my waist. Taken in my studio. The timestamp, 3 months ago. Below it, a message. Found this on the security camera footage I'd forgotten about. Your husband's lawyer just requested all digital files from the house. Thought you should know what's coming. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late September. I dressed carefully, conservative navy dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. Patricia said presentation mattered. Look remorseful, she'd told me. Not defiant. You need the judge to see that you understand the gravity of what you did. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Andreas sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Gloria Carson. He didn't look at me when I walked in. Just stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Diego arrived late, limping slightly, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Justice Morrison, reviewed the files with an expression that gave nothing away. Then Andreas's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of adultery that destroyed a 12-year marriage and devastated 2 minor children. The evidence is comprehensive and damning." She presented it methodically. Clinically. Like she was dissecting a failed engineering project. "Not my life." First came the timeline. A chart projected on a screen. September through July. 11 months of documented meetings, phone calls, text messages. She'd color-coded it: blue for weekdays during school hours, red for evenings when Andreas worked late, yellow for weekends when he took the boys to activities. As you can see, Your Honor, this was not a brief affair born of momentary weakness. This was sustained, calculated deception conducted primarily in the marital home while the petitioner worked to support his family. Next came financial records. My credit card statements, highlighted in yellow. Mrs. Torres spent $3,200 at clothing stores between November and March. Department stores, boutiques, all during the affair. An additional $1,800 on salon services, cosmetics, and personal care. Phone bills show 848 text messages to Mr. Herrera's number, averaging 28 per day. Hotel receipts from 4 separate occasions when Mrs. Torres claimed to be attending art conferences. I'd forgotten about the hotels. The times Diego and I had driven 2 towns over, convinced no one would see us. How many lies had I told? How much money had I spent on someone else while Andreas paid for our children's school supplies, soccer uniforms, the mortgage? Then came the text messages. Gloria read them aloud in a flat, emotionless voice that somehow made them worse. "Me to Diego, A is working late again. 3rd time this week. He has no idea." Diego to me, "The man's clueless. Does he even notice you anymore?" Me to Diego, "Honestly? I don't think he'd care if he knew. We're basically roommates at this point, lol." I remembered typing those words. Sitting in my studio, phone in hand, feeling clever and rebellious. Now they sounded cruel. Dismissive. Like I was mocking the man who'd built me that studio. Who'd given me space to create while he shouldered everything else. "Your Honor," Gloria continued, "the respondent claims her husband was emotionally distant. Yet the evidence shows Mr. Torres regularly attempted to engage his wife. Planned date nights that she canceled. Suggested couples therapy that she refused. Attended every school event while Mrs. Torres frequently missed them due to unexplained absences." She pulled up another document. The boys' school records. Attendance sheets for parent-teacher conferences, class parties, field trips. Andreas's signature appeared on every single one. Mine was sporadic at best. The studio where the affair was conducted was built by Mr. Torres as a birthday gift to his wife. He spent $15,000 of his own savings and 3 months of weekends constructing it. This is the space she chose to betray him in. I felt the judge's eyes on me. I kept my gaze down. Then it was Diego's turn to testify. He took the stand looking nervous, his knee brace visible under his dress pants. Andreas's lawyer started gentle. Almost friendly. "Mr. Herrera, when did you first meet Mrs. Torres?" "Last February. I was hired to build some custom shelving in her studio." "And when did you learn she was married?" "The first day." She mentioned her husband. "Did she wear a wedding ring?" Diego shifted. "Yes, so you knew from the very beginning that she was married?" "Yes, but..." "And you pursued her anyway?" "It wasn't like that. We just talked at first. She seemed lonely." "When did the relationship become physical?" Diego glanced at me. I couldn't meet his eyes. "Maybe a month after we met?" "And where did these encounters typically occur?" "Her studio, mostly. Sometimes we'd meet at a cafe or other places." "The studio attached to her home?" "Where her children lived. They were at school." "Did you ever consider the impact this might have on 2 young boys if discovered?" We didn't think it would be discovered." "So you were careful to hide it?" "We were discreet." "Mr. Herrera, I'm going to read you some text messages you sent to Mrs. Torres." "Did you write this? Your husband sounds like a robot. Does he even have feelings?" Diego's face reddened. "That was. We were venting. And this one, bet he's so focused on his blueprints he doesn't even notice you're glowing lately. Were you making fun of the fact that Mr. Torres didn't suspect the affair?" "I didn't mean." "Yes or no, Mr. Herrera?" "Yes." "Did you tell Mrs. Torres that her marriage was already over and she deserved to be happy?" "I thought she did deserve happiness." "At whose expense?" "Her husband's? Her children's?" Diego had no answer. When they dismissed him, he walked past me without looking back. Our connection, that deep understanding we'd supposedly shared, had evaporated the moment real consequences arrived. Then it was my turn. Patricia had coached me. "Be honest. Show remorse. Don't make excuses. But sitting in that witness box, with Andreas finally looking at me, really looking at me, I felt like I was seeing myself clearly for the first time in years. Gloria approached slowly. Mrs. Torres, did your husband ever cheat on you? No. Did he physically abuse you? No. Emotionally abuse you? I wanted to say yes. To hold on to that narrative. But under oath, with the evidence spread before me, I couldn't. He was distant, I said quietly. But no. Not abuse. Did he provide for your family financially? Yes. Did he participate in childcare and household responsibilities? Yes. Did he attend your children's school events and activities? Yes. So your complaint is that he worked long hours to support your family and wasn't as emotionally available as you wanted. And your solution was to conduct an 11-month affair in your home? I made a mistake. A mistake? Or a series of deliberate choices over nearly a year? I had no answer that wouldn't damn me further. Character witnesses came next. Andreas's parents, warm, kind people who'd always welcomed me. My own parents, who looked ashamed. Teachers from the boys' school. Andreas's colleagues. One after another, they painted the same picture. Andreas Torres, reliable, dedicated, present. Mariana Torres, increasingly absent, distracted, unavailable. The final witness was Andreas himself. He took the stand with the same controlled composure he'd maintained throughout. No drama. No theatrics. Just truth. Mr. Torres, his lawyer said gently, can you describe your marriage before you discovered the affair? His voice was steady but something flickered in his eyes, pain he'd learned to bury. I thought we were solid. Not perfect, but committed. I knew Mariana was unhappy. I suggested therapy. I tried planning special time together. She always said no, but I thought we'd work through it eventually. I didn't realize she'd already moved on. What happened the day you discovered the affair? I came home early from work. The boys were at practice. I went to the studio to surprise her, maybe convince her to grab dinner. And I found them. Can you describe what you saw? His jaw tightened. He had his arms around her. They were kissing. In the studio I built for her. And I just broke. Do you regret your violent reaction? Every day. I've never hit anyone in my life. But seeing them there, in our home, I wasn't thinking. I just reacted. It was wrong. And I'm getting help to make sure it never happens again. Do you still love your wife? Silence. Long and heavy. I loved who I thought she was, Andreas said finally. But that woman doesn't exist. Maybe she never did. Court adjourned for the day. As I gathered my things, I overheard Andreas talking to his lawyer in the hallway. His voice was low but I caught the words, I would have done anything to save our marriage. But she didn't even give me a chance to know something was wrong. She just replaced me. I walked out into the autumn air and threw up in the courthouse parking lot. That night, Patricia called. Mariana, I need to tell you something. Andreas's team just submitted additional evidence. Security footage from cameras you apparently didn't know about. Timestamps match perfectly with times you said you were alone or running errands. There's a lot of it. My entire body went cold. How much? 47 separate video files. They're presenting them tomorrow morning. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay in Elena's spare bed staring at the ceiling, imagining what those 47 videos might show. The courtroom was packed the next morning. Word had spread somehow. People I didn't recognize filled the gallery, probably colleagues of Andreas, maybe just curious onlookers drawn to the spectacle of a marriage imploding. Gloria stood when Justice Morrison called the court to order. Your Honor, we'd like to present video evidence that definitively establishes the timeline and nature of the respondent's affair. The screen flickered to life. The first video was dated November 3rd. My studio, filmed from an angle I'd never noticed. Diego and me, sitting close on the love seat, his hand on my knee. Talking, laughing. Nothing overtly love-making, but intimate in a way that made my stomach turn. The timestamp showed 1:53 p.m. A Tuesday. The boys would have been at school. Andreas at work. This was 2 weeks after Mr. Herrera completed the shelving project, Gloria narrated. Note that this is a social visit, not a professional one. More videos. December. January. February. The progression was obvious. Sitting close. Holding hands. A kiss that lasted too long. Each one timestamped, dated, catalogued. March 15th. Diego arriving at 10 a.m. Leaving at 3 p.m. 5 hours. April 22nd. Same thing. I couldn't watch but I couldn't look away. That was me on the screen. Making choices. Lying. Sneaking around. Over and over and over. 47 documented visits over 11 months, Gloria said. All during hours when Mr. Torres was at work and the children were at school. Mrs. Torres was careful. Calculating. This was not a moment of weakness. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of my own breathing. Then came the divorce decree. Justice Morrison's voice was crisp, professional, devoid of sympathy. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, this court grants the petition for divorce on grounds of adultery. Division of assets will heavily favor the petitioner given the respondent's marital misconduct. Mrs. Torres will receive 25% of marital assets, Mr. Torres 75%. Patricia had warned me, but hearing it made it real. Everything Andreas and I had built, the house, the savings, the investments, mostly is now payment for what I'd destroyed. Regarding custody of the minor children, I gripped the edge of the table. Mr. Torres is granted full legal and physical custody of Mateo Torres, age 13, and Leo Torres, age 9. Mrs. Torres will receive supervised visitation, 4 hours per week, pending completion of court-mandated therapy and parenting classes. Visitation may be expanded at the discretion of the court after 6 months of compliance and positive reports from the supervising authority. Supervised. Like I was dangerous. Like I might hurt my own children, but hadn't I already hurt them? Just in a different way? The judge continued. The court acknowledges that Mr. Torres's violent reaction was unacceptable. However, it was a single incident in response to extreme provocation, not a pattern of behavior. Mr. Torres has shown remorse, sought counseling, and maintained stability for his children during a traumatic period. In contrast, Mrs. Torres's sustained deception and poor judgment demonstrate a pattern of prioritizing personal desires over her children's well-being. Each word was a nail in a coffin I'd built myself. The civil suit against Diego came next, heard by the same judge. Diego's lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity, emotional distress, shared responsibility. But the evidence was overwhelming. Mr. Herrera knowingly pursued a married woman. Text messages show he encouraged the affair, mocked the husband, and showed no remorse for his role in destroying a family. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff. Mr. Herrera is ordered to pay $175,000 in damages to Mr. Torres for alienation of affection and criminal conversation. Diego's face went white. That was more than his business was worth. More than his savings. Years of his life, gone. He found me outside the courthouse after. No limping now, just rage. This is your fault, he hissed. You said your marriage was dead. You said he wouldn't care. You ruined my life. I ruined both our lives, I said quietly. We didn't do anything wrong. We fell in love. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Not the sensitive artist who understood me. Just a man who'd helped me blow up my life and now wanted someone to blame. We did everything wrong, I said. And I'm done pretending otherwise. So that's it? You're just giving up? No. I'm finally taking responsibility. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. Then he turned and walked away. I watched him go and felt nothing. Whatever I'd thought we had, it was as fake as the story I'd told myself about my marriage. Andreas came out a few minutes later. His parents were with him, his mother's arm linked through his. When he saw me, he stopped. His parents continued to the car. Andreas stood there, 10 feet away, and for the first time since that day in the studio, we were alone. Andreas. I don't hate you, Mariana. His voice was flat. Exhausted. I wish I did. It would be easier, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't. You're right. It doesn't. He looked at me, and I saw what I'd done to him. The lines around his eyes that hadn't been there a year ago. The weight he'd lost. The careful control he'd built to keep from falling apart. I loved you. I really did. I would have done anything to save our marriage. But you didn't even give me a chance to try. I know, do you? Because from where I'm standing, you threw away 12 years, 2 kids, and a man who would have walked through fire for you, all because you were bored. The word hit like a physical blow. Bored. That's what it came down to, wasn't it? Not abuse. Not neglect. Just ordinary life with an ordinary man, and I'd been too selfish to appreciate it. The boys, I said. Can we at least try to be civil? For them, I will always be civil. Professional. Whatever they need. But don't expect more than that. You broke something that can't be fixed. He walked away. I stood in the courthouse parking lot watching my husband, ex-husband, disappear into his car with his parents, and I finally understood what I'd lost. Not just a marriage. Not just a house. I'd lost the life we'd built together. The future we'd planned. The family dinners and inside jokes and quiet Sunday mornings. The privilege of watching my sons grow up every single day instead of in 4-hour supervised blocks. All of it. Gone. My first supervised visit was scheduled for the following Saturday. A neutral location, A family services center with uncomfortable chairs and toys that looked like they'd been donated in 1995. A woman named Mrs. Rivera would observe and take notes on everything. I arrived early. Paced. Checked my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. At exactly 2 p.m., Andreas walked in with the boys. Mateo looked older somehow. Harder. Leo was clutching a stuffed dinosaur I didn't recognize, something he'd gotten while I was gone. 4 hours, Andreas said to Mrs. Rivera. Not to me. I'll be back at 6. He left without looking at me. Hi, I said to my sons. My voice cracked. I've missed you both so much. Leo took a tentative step forward. Then stopped and looked at Mateo. Mateo's face was unreadable. Hey, Mom. Mrs. Rivera gestured to the play area. Why don't you three spend some time together? I'll be right here if you need anything. We sat at a small table. Leo with his dinosaur. Mateo with his arms crossed. Me with no idea what to say. How's school? I tried. Fine, Mateo said. What about soccer? How's the season going? Good. We made playoffs. That's wonderful. I'd love to. I stopped. I couldn't go to his games. Couldn't show up to anything. My supervised visits were Saturday afternoons only. Silence. Leo spoke suddenly. Dad says you're getting better. My throat tightened. I'm trying, sweetheart. Are you coming home? I looked at Mrs. Rivera. She was writing something in her notepad. No, baby. I'm not. But I'm still your mom. I still love you both more than anything. Then why did you leave? His voice was so small. I didn't leave. But that was a lie, wasn't it? I had left. Long before Andreas found out. I'd left emotionally, mentally, in every way that mattered. I made some really bad choices. And now I have to live with them. Mateo's jaw clenched. Do you regret it? Everyone asked that question. The lawyers, the psychologist, Elena. As if regret could undo what I'd done. Yes, I said. Every single day. Do you regret getting caught? Or do you regret doing it? 13 years old and he'd cut straight to the truth. Both, I admitted. I regret all of it. The 4 hours crawled by. We played a board game. Ate snacks I'd brought that they picked at politely. Made stilted conversation that felt nothing like the easy relationship we'd once had. When Andreas came back, Leo hugged me briefly before running to his father. Mateo just nodded. Bye, Mom. I watched them leave. Mrs. Rivera's pen scratching notes the entire time. In my car, I finally let myself cry. Not pretty tears. Ugly, gasping sobs that left me hollow. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Diego's lawyer filed for bankruptcy. The judgment is going to garnish his wages for years. Thought you should know. Another person's life destroyed. I drove back to Elena's apartment in silence. She was waiting with coffee and the kind of sympathy I didn't deserve. How was it? They're strangers, I said. My own children. They're polite strangers who call me mom out of obligation. It'll get better. It takes time. Would it? Or was this my life now? Supervised visits and distant children and the permanent label of the mother who cheated? I opened my laptop that night. Started writing. Not a justification this time. Not a victim narrative. Just the truth. I had an affair. For 11 months. In my home. Where my children slept. I lied to everyone. I destroyed my family. And now I'm living with the consequences. The cursor blinked. I kept typing. My name is Mariana Torres. And this is the story of how I ruined my life. 6 months later, I still lived in Elena's spare room. The divorce settlement gave me $55,000, my share of our savings, minus legal fees. Enough for a security deposit and maybe 3 months' rent, but I couldn't bring myself to look for a place yet. The teaching position I'd had at Lincoln Elementary? Gone. They'd restructured the art program. The superintendent's assistant was kind enough to admit the real reason off the record. Parents had complained. They didn't want someone like me around their children. I found work at a craft supply store. Minimum wage, 20 hours a week. My coworker was a 19-year-old college student who called me ma'am and didn't ask questions about why a woman my age was restocking paint tubes. Every Saturday, 2 to 6 p.m., I saw my sons. We'd moved from the family services center to a supervised visit at a park, which felt less clinical but somehow more painful. I could see other families, intact families, having picnics, playing frisbee, being normal. Mateo came to visits out of obligation. He was polite, answered my questions, but there was a wall between us that grew taller each week. Last month, he made the school soccer all-star team. Andreas sent me a photo, just the information, no commentary. Mateo in his uniform, holding a trophy, grinning at his father behind the camera. I wasn't there. I'd never be there for those moments again. Leo was softer, still wanted to hug me, but he'd stopped asking when I was coming home. Last visit, he talked excitedly about the treehouse Andreas was building in their backyard, the house that used to be ours. Dad let me help hammer the nails, he'd said, and I'd smiled and said how wonderful that was while something inside me crumbled. They were thriving without me. Better, even. The supervised visits report from Mrs. Rivera said as much. Children appear well adjusted in father's care. Mother shows appropriate remorse but children maintain emotional distance. Recommend continued supervision. My parents visited once. We had coffee at a cafe. My mother cried. My father looked at me like he didn't know who I was anymore. We raised you better than this, he'd said quietly. They hadn't visited again. Diego, I heard through Elena's friend who knew someone who knew him, had moved 3 hours north. Some town I'd never heard of. His business was gone, sold to cover a fraction of the judgment. He'd declared bankruptcy but the garnishment would follow him for years, 25% of whatever he earned, sent directly to Andreas every month. I wondered sometimes if he blamed me. Probably. I blamed me too. Andreas, according to the boy's careful mentions, was doing well. He'd gotten a promotion at work. Started going to the gym. His mother came over twice a week to help with the boys, and they'd established routines that worked. Movie nights on Fridays. Breakfast for dinner on Wednesdays. All the little traditions we'd had, reconfigured without me. Dad's teaching me to cook, Matteo mentioned once. Real cooking, not just pasta. I'd always made pasta. It was easy, fast, required minimal attention. Andreas was teaching our son actual skills while I counted quarters at a craft store register. Therapy was mandatory, part of my custody arrangement. Every week, I sat in Dr. Morrison's office, different from the judge, different Morrison, and talked about my choices. Do you understand why you had the affair? She asked in our 8th session. Because I was selfish. Because I was too cowardly to either fix my marriage or leave it honestly. Because it was easier to escape into something that felt good than to do the hard work of living my real life. That's progress, she'd said. Real accountability. But accountability didn't bring my family back. The hearing for expanded visitation was last week. Patricia presented evidence of my compliance, therapy attendance, parenting classes completed, stable, if minimal, employment, clean psychiatric evaluation. Andreas's lawyer didn't oppose unsupervised visits. Andreas himself stayed silent, letting the courts decide. Justice Morrison reviewed everything and granted me unsupervised visitation. 8 hours per week, split between 2 days. Progress, Patricia called it. It felt like scraps. Yesterday was my first unsupervised visit. I picked the boys up at Andreas's house, our old house. He answered the door in jeans and a t-shirt, hair slightly messy, and for a moment he looked like the man I'd married. Before I'd broken him. 8 p.m., he said. Not a minute later. I understand. He handed me Leo's backpack. He needs his inhaler before bed if he starts wheezing. And Matteo has homework due Monday. I'll make sure. I know you will. He paused. They're my priority, Mariana. Not your feelings, not your guilt. Them. Always them. I know. I took the boys to a pizza place. Leo was excited, chattering about school and friends in the treehouse. Matteo was quieter but less guarded without the supervisor watching. Dad's been dating someone, he said suddenly, over pepperoni slices. My stomach dropped. Oh, her name's Veronica. She works at his firm. She's nice, I guess. Veronica. The name was a stone in my chest. Andreas, moving on. Building a life without me. Maybe one day the boys would call her something other than Veronica. Maybe she'd be at soccer games, making breakfast, tucking Leo in. Living the life I'd thrown away. That's good, I managed. Your dad deserves to be happy. Matteo studied me. You really mean that? Yes. And I did. Andreas deserved everything I'd failed to give him. Attention. Appreciation. Loyalty. We spent the afternoon at a park. Leo wanted to play on the swings. Matteo sat with me on a bench and scrolled his phone. Normal things. Small things. But I wasn't their primary parent anymore. I was the weekend visitor. The cautionary tale. When I dropped them off at 8, Andreas was waiting on the porch. A woman stood beside him, tall, dark hair, pretty smile. Veronica, she waved at the boys. They waved back. I drove away and didn't look in the rearview mirror. Now it's past midnight and I'm lying in Elena's spare room, writing this. All of it. The truth. There's no redemption here. No triumphant comeback. I don't get my family back. I don't get to rewind time and make better choices. I'm 40 years old, working retail, living in my cousin's spare room, seeing my children 16 hours a week if I'm lucky. My ex-husband is moving on. My sons are adjusting to life without me. Diego is somewhere rebuilding his own shattered existence. And I'm here. Alive, but barely living. People always want the cheater's story to end in either revenge or redemption. They want me destroyed or forgiven, but real life isn't that clean. I destroyed my marriage because I was too weak to face my own unhappiness. I hurt everyone who loved me because momentary escape felt better than long-term work. And now I'm living with exactly what I deserve, not dramatic punishment, just the slow, grinding consequence of being the person who threw everything away. My sons are strangers I see twice a week. My ex-husband is healing without me. And I'm a cautionary tale about what happens when you choose selfishness over commitment. Some nights I want to scream. To rage against the unfairness, to find someone else to blame. But the fairness is this: I made my choices. And choices have consequences. This is mine. The end. Update, 14 months post-divorce. For those who asked, no, things haven't gotten dramatically better. Mateo is in high school now, barely texts me back. Leo still visits but talks mostly about Dad and Veronica. Andreas got married last month. I wasn't invited. The boys were in the wedding. Diego, last I heard, is still paying garnishment. Still bitter. Still convinced we were victims. I'm in a studio apartment now. Still at the craft store. Still going to therapy. Still living with what I did. That's the real ending. Not revenge. Not redemption. Just consequences. Every single day. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you really like our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.